Good morning. Welcome to day one, April 19th, 2023, California Department of Education Advisory Commission on Special Education meeting. Ms. Chapman, please facilitate a roll call to establish a quorum. Welcome to day
My
one,
pleasure.
April 19th, 2023, California Department of Education.
Good morning,
Advisory
Commissioners.
Commission
As
on
I call
Special
your
Education.
name, please unmute
Okay,
yourself
Thank you for.
and verify your presence.
You know what happened?
Roll call to establish a quorum.
My
There,
pleasure.
what? I can't hear.
2023.
Vice Chair Toston,
Present.
If someone got their,
as I call your Commissioner Andrews,
And verify your presence. Roll call to establish a
I
quorum.
don't know, because I'm not seeing here. No mics are live.
Vice Chair Toston,
No mics are live. Someone got their,
Commissioner
oh, I think maybe I was not muted.
Commissioner Estes,
Here.
Commissioner Gill, Commissioner Graff,
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton, Chair Hayes White,
Here.
Commissioner Lopez,
Present.
Commissioner Notch,
Present.
Commissioner Oyakawa, Commissioner Ruiz, Commissioner Snipes,
Present.
Commissioner Sorter,
Here.
Commissioner Topalian,
Here.
Commissioner Mashad,
Present.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes our roll call. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I hereby call the April 19th, 2023 meeting of the California Advisory Commission on Special Education to order at 10:08 a.m. Commissioner Lopez, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And now we will move forward with our regular business, communications and announcements. Commissioners, we have some new faces among us. We have Melanie Johnson, Director of the Central California Diagnostic Center, who is sitting in for Dr. Nancy Aman. Director Johnson, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, your background, and your role in education. I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Chair White. My name is Melanie Johnson, and I am the director at the Diagnostic Center Central, which is located in Fresno, California. For those of you who don't know anything about the Diagnostic Center, it is a part of the California Department of Education, and it is under the Division of State Special Schools and Services Division. Primarily what we do are assessments for students that are in special education, professional development opportunities, and technical assistance for classroom teachers and school districts. My background is this is my 30th year in the field of special education. I have been a special day class teacher for learning handicap, which was what the credential was at the time when I got my credential, and for students with communicative handicaps, and which was the term at the time, and also for students with emotional disturbance, and I also have several years as a resource specialist. I obtained my credential in school psychology and started down that track when I went to the Diagnostic Center. And I've been at the Diagnostic Center about 19 years now, which is very hard to believe. I started out as an education specialist, and then I promoted to assistant director, and now I've been the director there for about 9 years. So I'm very happy to be here and meet everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us. All right. The State Board of Education has filled 2 of our vacant seats and has appointed Commissioner Russell Michaud and Commissioner Matthew Wilkins. I would like to invite Commissioners Michaud and Wilkins to introduce themselves by telling us who you are, your background, and your role in education. Starting with Commissioner Michaud, I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Chair White, and good morning. I'm humbled and excited to be serving on this commission. My name is Russell Michaud. I am the Managing Director of Special Education for Alpha Public Schools. We are a small public charter network in East San Jose. Prior to joining Alpha, I was an elementary special education teacher working in a categorical SDC class for students qualified under emotional disturbance. And prior to that, I got my start working with students with exceptional needs in high school, working at a summer camp for students on the autism spectrum, and also providing respite care for the Mental Health Association. I've been with Alpha since 2014, and have been working to build out their internal continuum of services, inclusive practices, and making sure that we are providing great services to students with disabilities. And again, honored to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. We are pleased to have you with us. And now for Commissioner Wilkins, I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Chair White. My name is Matt Wilkins, and I'm also very humbled to be here as a member of the Commission. I'm currently an education administrator for the Department of Developmental Services, where I oversee education programs in our developmental center, and we have an interagency agreement, so I also oversee programs in state hospitals for the Department of State Hospitals. In addition, DDS operates community-based residential homes, where I liaison with SELPA's County Offices of Education and LEAs to provide education for individuals who are residing in our homes there as well. Prior to joining DDS, I worked here at CDE in the Special Education Division for approximately 6 years. I worked in the Focus Monitoring Technical Assistance Units, providing technical assistance and monitoring primarily in LA County. And then after that, I also supported the SELPA unit in working on the local plan. Before that, I worked in a school district for almost 10 years. I started off as a general education teacher, and then I moved on to the district office where I did a lot of categorical programs prior to the LCFF. And I worked also as an instructional coach for teachers. I've also been a foster parent since 2012 to 2019, and I adopted 2 children as a foster parent, and one of those has an IEP, which is one of the reasons why I was considered for the commission. So I'm very humbled to be here, and I'm very appreciative for this opportunity. Thank you.
Welcome. We have a dynamic commission already, but in addition to our new commissioners, we appreciate you contributing and being on the commission. So are you ready to take your oath of office? So, State Board Member Yoshimoto is going to come up to the podium, and let's do Commissioner Michaud first, and then let's do Commissioner Wilkins after. You have to turn it on.
Good morning. Okay, good morning. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Russell Michaud,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Wilkins.
Good morning. How are you? Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Matthew Wilkins, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, now let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. All right. Commissioners, it is time to begin the 2023-2024 election process. I now pass the mic to Commissioner Topalian, Chair of the Elections Committee, who will facilitate the distribution of the 2023-24 self-nomination forms. I pass the mic to you.
Thank you. I just want to review on some of the logistics around how the election process will proceed from this meeting to also the June meeting as well. In our bylaws, page 5, it indicates that election of a commission chair and a commission vice chair shall be held at the last regular meeting of each fiscal year. 2 meetings prior to the last regular meeting of the fiscal year, the commission chair shall appoint an election committee. At that meeting immediately preceding the last regular meeting of the fiscal year, the election committee shall distribute to the commission members, excluding student members, self-nomination forms on which members shall indicate their willingness to serve as chair, vice chair, or neither. And just it goes down and it just says that the election committee shall secure completion of the form, any commission members absent from the meeting. So therefore, I believe that they would have to either email it by the close of the meeting today to me, if they want to self-nominate themselves, if they are absent. So any commissioner who is not present today will be able to email the form to me. But I passed out the forms at the beginning of the meeting, so you guys should all have the form. Do you guys all have a form? Okay, great. So please complete it and return it back to me by the end of the meeting today, and then we will check your, verify your eligibility to be a candidate, and then we will hold the elections and open roll call in the June meeting. Any questions? Great. And it's a great opportunity. So if you want to try it, something new, you can nominate yourself for vice chair, chair, anything you want. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next bullet. Regarding our annual Capitol visit, due to the renovations at the Capitol building, the meeting with Speaker Anthony Rendon has been canceled. However, Senator Josh Newman, chair of the California Senate Committee on Education, will be coming here to meet with us in this room, 1101, during the 3 p.m. hour. So that is the change to our agenda. So Senator Newman is supposed to be coming here during the 3 p.m. hour, okay? Any questions on that? All right, so we have a special appearance from our superintendent. Is he here ready for us? Okay, so we will move into the review of the agenda then.
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, members of the public. We have a very full agenda today, but there are some alterations as referenced by the chair in her comments related to the Capitol visit. In a few moments after our conversation, we will begin with item 1, reviewing the ACSE bylaws, language related to the student commissioner recruitment, as well as an update to the application process. Item 2, the Operations and Planning Committee report. Members of the Operation and Planning Committee will be providing updates on our conversations from our meeting earlier today. We'll be taking a break from 12 to 12:15. At 12:15, we will begin item 3, reviewing the new Individualized Education Program implementation data collection. We'll be hearing a presentation from members of the Department of Special Education, providing us update on how data will be collected going forward. Item 4 is a report from the Legislation and Policy Committee. Item 5, we will solicit general public comment. We'll be taking our lunch from 2 to 3. And at 3 p.m., and again, the visit to the Capitol has been canceled, so we will be staying in this room today. We are anticipating State Senator Josh Newman will be visiting us to discuss current legislation and an opportunity for us to share thoughts on some of our work in terms of our vision, mission, and platform. Shortly thereafter, we will be adjourning. Any questions regarding the agenda? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can we please review how to provide public comments in person, via telephone, and or via email, Ms. Chapman?
Sure, my pleasure. For public comment, the conference dial-in number is 717-908-1937. The participant access code is 467-9071#. Public comment is now being heard for this current topic only. Prior to making public comment, callers should make sure the volume on their computer is muted to avoid feedback sounds. Copies of meeting materials are available by emailing acse@cde.ca.gov.
Thank you. So while we're waiting on SSPI Thurmond, do we have folks here for item number 1? Well, why don't we just go ahead and move into item number 1 and we can get our bylaw language out of the way. So moving into item number 1, round 2, ACSE 2019 bylaw language vote and student commissioner recruitment application process update. Commissioners, please pull out and refer to attachment number 1A, titled ACSE 2019 Bylaws, Amendment Proposal, Round 1 vote. Commission approved language, February 16th, 2023. Y'all see that?
Excuse me, Commissioner. This is Kathy, interpreter. The other interpreter had to drop out and is now waiting to be let in. If you could please make her a chair or co-host for this also, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Everybody have the language in front of them? All right. Proposed bylaw language for Article 6 liaison was approved to move forward for a final vote on February 16, 2023. Remember that? This language reads as follows. Upon the approval of the commission, a liaison will be established with partner organizations who support the mission and vision of the Advisory Commission on Special Education. The role of an ACSE-appointed commissioner liaison is to actively observe and collect the partner organizations' discussions, progress, and decisions regarding students with disabilities. During each ACSE liaison agenda item, commissioner liaisons will publicly report new information for the commission to be updated on, but not limited to current issues, initiatives, bills, and activities regarding students with disabilities across the state of California. Initial contact between the ACSE commissioner liaison and the partner organization representative will be made by the commission chair. An appointed ACSE commissioner liaison is precluded from speaking on the behalf of the commission. An appointed ACSE commissioner liaison, the essential role is to actively observe and collect new information on the behalf of the commission. Is there a motion on the floor to adopt this very language in our ACSE bylaws under Article 6, liaison?
I move to adopt the new language for the ACSE liaison.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Chapman, can you please facilitate a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Vice Chair Tostin?
Yes.
Commissioner Estes?
Yes.
Commissioner Graff?
Yes.
Chair Hayes White?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Notch?
Yes.
Commissioner Snipes?
Yes.
Commissioner Sorter?
Yes.
Commissioner Topalian?
Yes.
Commissioner Michaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Yes.
That concludes the roll call.
All right, the motion passes. Next, proposed bylaw language for Section 3 student members was approved to move forward for a final vote on February 16, 2023. This language reads as follows. Student members will serve at the pleasure of and selection by the commission. A total of 4 student finalists will be submitted by the California Youth Leadership Forum and or the California Transition Alliance Youth Leadership Cadre to the commission for final selection and appointment. The term of each pupil appointed is 1 year with the option to serve a term of 1 year. The commission will appoint student members at the last meeting in the fiscal year or any time during the fiscal year whenever there is a vacancy. Is there a motion on the floor to adopt this very language in our ACSE bylaws under Section 3, student members?
I motion to approve the new language.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Ms. Chapman, can you please facilitate a roll call vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Tostin,
Yes.
Commissioner Estes,
Yes.
Commissioner Graff,
Yes.
Chair Hayes White,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Notch,
Yes.
Commissioner Snipes, Commissioner Sorter, Commissioner Topalian,
Yes.
Commissioner Michaud,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins.
All right, now let's clap it up for our bylaw updates. We got some 2023 bylaw updates, everyone. Thank you for your hard work. All right. So, do we have folks from the California Transition Alliance on Zoom ready to discuss with us what they have?
Yes, we do, Chair White.
Okay.
We are,
So now we will hear from the California Transition Alliance, who will share an update regarding the development of the new application recruitment process for our voting student commissioners. I now turn over the mic to Joyce Montgomery and Dee Torrington from the California Transition Alliance. Ladies, are you here?
Yes, it's great to see you.
Great to see. Well, I can't see. Oh, now I can see you. Hi, Miss Torrington. How you doing?
Hey. Great.
I pass the mic to you.
Thank you. So Joyce and I have a presentation to share with you all about our efforts in our recruiting of youth for the Advisory Commission. Joyce put together a slide deck and she will take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dee, and thank you, Chair White and Commission. So we would like to give you an update on the recruitment efforts that we have been working on related to this round one vote. And we're very excited that has passed. So we have an outreach flyer that we have in draft form that we would like to share with you. Is everyone able to see the draft flyer?
Yes.
So the flyer says, be a student commissioner, help us make a difference. The California Transition Alliance is seeking to recruit student commissioners for the California Department of Education Advisory Commission on Special Education. The Advisory Commission on Special Education provides recommendations and advice to the State Board of Education, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Legislature, and the Governor in new and continuing areas of research, program development, and evaluation in California special education. So we have an apply now, and you'll see our fancy QR code that will take students to a fillable application that we'll share with you. And then it says, are you a student 16 to 22 years old with a disability and interested in taking on a statewide leadership role? Can you travel to Sacramento 5 times per year for 2-day meetings? The application can also be found on the California Transition Alliance website. Deadline for application submission is June 9th, 2023. And we have a picture here of our a representative of our students to get our students excited about participating. In addition, I will share with you our form. So now you should be able to see our California State Advisory Commission on Special Education Student Commissioner application. And it is a fillable form. And we'll have this also available on our website. And it asks for the students' information, their school. We're asking them for school contact information. We're asking them for the type of organization involvement. We are directing them to the Advisory Commission on Special Education website to go to get more specific details about the qualifications and rules and understanding of the terms. We're asking for a school official or principal because the students would be missing school to attend this. We're asking, of course, for parent signature, and we're asking for the student commissioners to provide recommendations. We're asking for 2 recommendations to provide, as well as a brief statement of why that they wish to participate as a youth commissioner for special education. In addition, we've made just a very quick little overview page that talks about taking this information directly from the website about what it is, the Advisory Commission on Special Education, when do they meet, who serves on the commission, who is a youth commissioner, and that is from the language that was approved today. And then the length of term, also from that language, and then how to become a commissioner by completing the application. And we have Sean Spence, who is one of our members of our youth commission on our California Transition Alliance. And he has agreed to do a little outreach video to talk about becoming a youth commissioner for the Advisory Commission on Special Education. And so he just kind of walking the students through the process about how to complete the form, how to submit the form. And we thought it would really, having a youth voice speaking to other youth about how to apply would really help to get people excited, youth excited about joining the commission. And then we had some outreach considerations that we wanted to consider. We wanted, once we get these documents approved, we wanted to be able to have permission to outreach using the special education listserv, workability listserv, other listservs such as the Department of Rehabilitation, Cooperative Section Services listserv, and other targeted groups. And then we wanted to see if you guys had any questions for us about our outreach. And one other consideration, I don't think made it to our presentation, but we once we do have these documents approved, about having translated into Spanish, or if there's any requests of having them translated into any other languages as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Montgomery, for all the hard work and preparation that you've put into the draft application and flyer. I'm going to open up the floor for commissioners to pose their questions. And I would like to ask myself to make sure that the CDE has an opportunity to blast this on their listserv. Executive Secretary Calamise?
Absolutely. We will push this out on all of our relevant listservs, and we'll coordinate with the Department of Rehabilitation as well.
Perfect. Okay, commissioners, I'm going to open up the floor for you.
Commissioner Estes.
I just a clarifying question on the blast through CDE. Does that go to all the LEAs? All of the educational agencies, the school districts?
So that listserv is specifically set up for special education directors, county offices of education, also the SELPA special education local plan area administrators as well. However, we do have the ability to push it out on sort of larger listservs as well to reach as many potential students and LEAs as we can in terms of sort of the general education listservs as well. We can do that.
Thank you.
Any additional commissioner comments? I would just like to add,
Sorry. Would it also be possible to share with DDS to send out to regional centers?
Absolutely. We will shout it from the mountaintops. So yes, absolutely. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkins. Just wanted to, again, thank you for your presentation, and also suggest that previous Commissioner Mike Infante may also be someone to consider for the promotional video, as he, that was his career path, and I've seen a number of his shorts on Facebook. So anytime that we can highlight student voice in a recruitment, especially someone with as experienced and committed and involved as Mike.
And that would be excellent if we could get his information on that.
We'll follow up.
Anybody else, commissioners, want to speak?
Yes, it's about time, and I'm happy we're doing this.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let me open up the floor for any public comments in the building at this time. All right, thank you. I see somebody standing up for a public comment. Yay!
Good morning, Veronica Coates, SELPA Administrator for Tehama County SELPA, and we are very excited about this prospect. Dr. Hayes White also presented at the SELPA Association last month to talk about recruitment efforts for youth, and I know many of the SELPA administrators are excited to get this on our listserv, as Director Calamise just said, and we are ready and able and willing to start helping with this recruitment effort. As you know, the association did support this bill, and we are just happy to see it happen and are here as your cheerleaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Any other public commenters in the building at this time? All right. Seeing and hearing none, are there any public commenters online at this time? On the phone?
Yes, there is.
All right.
Caller ending in 4937. Please state your name and affiliation. Caller ending with 4937. Please state your name and affiliation. That concludes the callers for this item.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery and Ms. Torrington. Thank you so much for your hard work. We will be in touch with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So now we are going to have our special appearance from our very own State Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Honorable Tony Thurmond. Superintendent Thurmond, before I pass the mic to you, I would like to acknowledge that you have consistently, for the third consecutive year, invested your time, your partnership, and your support to the Commission. And your acknowledgement and participation in ACSE has allowed the Commission, as one advisory body, to perform the duties required of us in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act under your dynamic leadership. And so I thank you. And I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the Commission. Congratulations to the new members who've been sworn in. To our Director Calamise, thank you for your leadership, and to all of our staff. It's an honor to be before you right now at this time when I think it's got to be the most difficult time for schools everywhere in the country. Having come from what I think is the most difficult experience that we will have in our lifetime, to trying to make sense of that and how do we use that to create an education system that is better than what we had before. Just recognizing that there were many disparities that existed before the pandemic and that were exacerbated during the pandemic. My heart breaks for the stories that I heard about parents of students served in special education during the pandemic and the various services that they were not able to receive, and in some cases, what some parents described as setbacks for their children as a result of the lack of that support. I know that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to overcome that, and that there are waiting lists and that there have been delays, and that we must honor not just what the law says, but the spirit of the law to make sure that every student receives what is in their best interest of their learning goals, that they not be caught up in the politics of education about being told no because of cost, but they be told yes based on their needs. I thank you for your continual advocacy, Madam Chair, and always being in my ear. Advising me on the things that I should know and that I might not know, and reminding me that we've made a commitment to help bring student voices to this very body. And we are committed to doing just that. And as we're talking now, I intend for us to put out some more publicity announcing the opportunity for there to be student commissioners, because this is something that is deeply a part of what we value here. Commissioner Estes can tell you, because we've had the chance to work for years on a number of things related to mental health, special education, and youth voice has always been a part of that work. As you all know, recently I established the first ever statewide youth advisory council at the California Department of Education, so that students can advise me and the governor and the legislature on all things related to education. And so it's in that spirit that I take the wonderful opportunity to be able to help recruit 2 commissioners to serve on this body. And anything that you need to make that happen, please let me know and our team and our staff know. And that we will continue to work to make sure you have all the staffing that you need to support anything that is a priority for this commission. There are a number of initiatives that we are working on that I think relate, but I'd like to just reserve the time to hear from commissioners if they have questions or homework assignments that you want to give me. We're always available for homework assignments here, because what we care about is the bottom line. And the bottom line is, how do we do what's in the best interest of every student? And so that means we have to listen. That means we have to listen to educators and families and partners. We have to filter what happens here in the Capitol to reach school districts in a way where it actually meets the needs of our students. And we have to filter up from our school communities so that legislators and policymakers understand what's really needed at the school level. I'm not going to lie to you, that's a hard act to balance, because legislators are going to legislate. I know, having been one. But what good is it to pass legislation and mandates if it doesn't meet the needs of those that we intend to serve, our students and our families? And so I'm hopeful for ongoing conversations with this body where you all can also help filter the specific needs for our families who are served with disabilities, because we know that the work is very, very complicated and often hard for our families to access. And so I look forward to our work together. I look forward to making connections with some of the things that we've done. You know, as a legislator, you know, I authored legislation to expand the funding for our regional center systems. I'm a former social worker in the regional center system. I work for 2 different regional centers. And I'm honored that the first thing I got to work on when I arrived here in 2014 was restoring all the funding that was cut to our regional center systems. But I like to change the conversations that sometimes happen between DDS and other programs. My experience at the school level, having worked as a former one-on-one in school, as a one-on-one school aide, is that sometimes our systems argue about whose responsibility it is. And when our systems are arguing about whose responsibility, who gets hurt? The children and the families. I'm not interested in those debates. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in, you know, in what our systems force our families to do, to lawyer up, because they believe that's the only way that they can be heard. I spent 4 years serving on a school board saying, we don't need to force our families to lawyer up. Let's listen to them, and let's provide what is in the best interest of our children. And if it's in their IEP or their 504 plan, let's just provide it. Yeah, it costs a lot of money, but it's our responsibility to provide it. And I think it costs less when we say yes than when we say no, when we force our families to lawyer up. And so I've spent a lot of time talking about how we have alternative methods of resolving dispute, so that it's not just a system that is frozen in conflict and we're unable to provide the services that we need. Now, we got 1,000 school districts, more than 1,000 school districts in our state. And so there's only so much that can happen from this office, but we try to become that communication filter for when there are concerns that come from districts where there's additional help that's needed. We work closely with our county superintendents and all of our SELPAs and our partners to find ways to amplify the needs of our students. And so I make that commitment to you. I just want you to know that our incredibly hardworking staff, they look for opportunities to create, I would call it, cross-collaboration across program issues. I would note that our deputy superintendent, who oversees all of our work in early education, is here, Sarah Nova Morgan, reminds me of all of our work to expand state preschool programs and to make sure that there is full inclusion in our expansion of our preschool programs. I would share with you that we've recently agreed to help with the implementation of SB 691, a bill that would mandate dyslexia screening in all of our schools. And we've been working very closely with UCSF as they roll out their universal screener, Multitudes. It's ready in English. They hope that it will soon be ready in Spanish, and there are future plans for it to be available in Mandarin. And so I bring you greetings in English, hello, in Spanish, hola, and nehoma. That might be Cantonese, but I will work on my Mandarin for the next meeting. It's really important, as you all know, for us to have early awareness about the needs of our students and the possibility of students who may experience learning disabilities, whether it's dyslexia or something else that would put them at risk to not learn to read. We've made it a priority to support reading competency for our students by third grade. And so we've got a lot of work to do to get there. But we are administering now a grant to our schools for $250 million for reading coaches and specialists who can support those students. There is in the budget currently proposed and being debated this year another $250 million to support reading coaches and specialists. At the same time, we've hired 2 new co-directors to serve as state directors for literacy and reading by third grade at the Department of Education. We have a number of grants at the California Department of Education that touch on some aspect of literacy, and I want to acknowledge the staff that are doing that work. But we are grateful that we have additional capacity to help us be intentional about building coherent literacy strategies that will allow us to ensure that students learn to read by third grade. Because we know the impacts when students don't learn to read by third grade. Saddening that students drop out, saddening that students end up in the criminal justice system. And I recently heard it said that there was a survey done of many who are in our criminal justice system, and upwards of 80% of those said that they struggled with dyslexia or other learning difficulties that were not recognized in time. And so we can do better. And so I offer these things to you. We are engaged in what I call a statewide campaign for teacher recruitment in a way that we've never seen before at the Department of Education. It might surprise you to know we don't have a single recruitment staff person at the department of 2,500 folks. It's not the way the department is structured. And so typically school districts handle recruitment, and there are other organizations that support it in some way, recognizing that none of these programs will ever happen if we don't recruit more educators. We've entered into the field to try and provide support. We're partnering with CCEE, a great partner that is represented by our vice chair. We are partnering with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to expand residency programs, and we're partnering to promote the scholarship that's available for anyone who wants to become a teacher or a counselor, but a lot of Californians don't know about it. $20,000 is available for anyone who wants to get a teaching credential or become a mental health clinician working in our schools. And so on my way here, I was at a school visit, and someone came right up to me and said, I just signed up, I just got accepted to an MSW program, how do I get that scholarship? And I'm taking down their number so I can call them back and make sure that they get connected to these programs, because as great as these programs are, it is difficult to access them. They're across multiple agencies and multiple websites. And so we've established our own hotline number. You can just call it, 1-800, I want to be a teacher. No, that's not quite the way it works, but we do have a hotline number, and we have a website or an email address that anyone can send a note, and we call folks back to connect them. And we know that we need teachers in every single subject, especially our special education teachers and bilingual education teachers. And so for anyone who wants to get information about how to become a teacher, how to access the scholarship, we encourage them to send a note at teachinca@cde.ca.gov. And we will return those calls and make the connections. We've been doing what I call it the one-stop recruitment fair, where we literally put on a recruitment fair. We invite districts that have open positions to come with us. We invite universities that have openings in their teacher credentialing programs to be with us. We are creating a one-stop. We have 3,000 people who are tutoring and mentoring in schools right now who are undergraduate students. And so we're helping them get a $10,000 scholarship as an undergrad and then pairing that with the $20,000 scholarship that exists. And so we're hoping that many of those folks will become the next generation of special education teachers. And we're hoping to build out our classified ranks and to help our classified staff to have more one-on-one aides. And so we have a lot of work to do, but a lot of the work that you all are leading threads with some of the other initiatives that we are leading. I'll be talking shortly about a bill that we are sponsoring, AB 1051, that would increase the funding for our state special schools here in California. I'm proud of the work that we do for our 2 schools that support deaf students and our schools that support blind students, and many of those students who have needs through special education and have IEPs. They provide state-of-the-art preschool programs. They provide state-of-the-art CTE programs. They have incredible educators and staff. But the facilities have not been supported. They have not had ongoing funding. And these are programs that have one investor, the state of California. And so AB 1051 says, let us give ongoing funding to our state special schools and our diagnostic centers that are doing incredible work. I want to give a big shout out to all of our staff at the diagnostic centers and at the state special schools. If you haven't had the chance to visit them, I would love to host you all at any of them. And I think we can accommodate almost anywhere in the state, since we have diagnostic centers in the Bay Area and Fremont and in the Central Valley and also in LA. And so we'd love to host you at any of the diagnostic centers or at any of our state special schools. And of course, if you would rather us go to another school, we were happy to join you at any school in our state. And so, Madam Chair, I'll leave it there as an opening and would be happy to submit to any questions that members of the commission might have or direction that you might have for how we can better support this commission and most importantly, better support the needs of our students and families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond. I have 2 questions for you, and then I'm going to open up the floor. One is, would you be willing to take a picture with us before you leave and for our annual report? Yes. And the second question is, would you be willing to look at your calendar and return to us in August so you can welcome our 2 voting student commissioners in the building?
Yes, and you see the way the chair did that? The chair said, come back in August when we welcome. It's like sending a homework assignment to Director Calamise and to me and everybody else to say, y'all better have that ready by August. So the answer is yes and yes. Yes and yes.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to open the floor for everyone else. Thank you.
I see a comment from Commissioner Groff.
Well, welcome, and it's a pleasure to hear you, Superintendent. And I'm Professor Emeritus at Loyola Marymount University, and I understand you're going to be recognized, I believe, next weekend as Educator of the Year at the School of Education for Loyola Marymount University. So I just want to applaud you for that. So thank you so much. There are a couple of areas that you commented on that I'd like to talk a little bit further. One is you talked about recruitment, but I'm wondering what the department is doing about retention of special educators, because typically the literature says in terms of retention, it's lack of administrative support, and it's also the working conditions, the caseload, the workload, that sort of thing, as well as litigation. So I'm hoping that the department can work on the retention issue, because we can recruit every possible teacher, but if we don't retain them, then it's really not, to the advantage of our students. The other comment, and while you didn't really allude to that, is about community schools, and certainly the funding. That's one of the initial, really the priority, I think, for the department, and how inclusion of students with disabilities can be part of that initiative, and that actually be a priority, since the state of California really needs to improve its percentage of students that are in general education classrooms. So I'm hoping that the department can really make the priority of inclusion related to community schools. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to let you know that on community schools, nearly $4 billion has already been allocated. We're moving into our second wave of allocation for schools. And if you allow me, I can have an answer for you by the end of the day about how well we think those dollars dovetail, align with our inclusion programs. And so by way of this meeting, I'm making an announcement to our Deputy Superintendent, Steve Zimmer, who oversees that work, to get word to Director Calamise so that we can announce to you before the meeting concludes where we are in terms of success in creating that alignment. And if we have not had success, that we will make the effort to double down, especially as we are making this next wave of allocation. So thank you for the homework assignment there. And on retention, I will ask our staff to provide a few other updates. Deputy Superintendent Cheryl Cotton can help us with some updates, but I know that she would share with you that the state is still administering $1.5 billion for what we call the Educator Effectiveness Grant. It's intended to provide professional development opportunities for our staff on many ways, and with the focus on how we close learning gaps and how we support students who've been historically underrepresented or disadvantaged. You will hear me talking often about what we must do to address learning gaps for many students. I often talk about the need for us to close learning gaps for African American students, for our English learners, for students with disabilities, for Native American students and students who are homeless and in foster care. We are working constantly to figure out how to better center our work for those students. And every single grant that we put out, how do we align them in ways that we get better outcomes for all students, but especially those students? And I'm asking everyone at the department to be a part of this effort to say that we will have comparable, measurable outcomes to see the impact of what the Educator Effectiveness Grant is. What is the impact of it? It's $1.5 billion. And I want to see the outcome and that we align it to the needs of the students that we're talking about serving. And so the other thing that I would share with you on retention is that we've exceeded our goal for the number of teachers who've been selected for the National Board Certification Program. And these teachers are getting access to the most rigorous training, but also a financial incentive to participate. And so I'm hoping that every single year we can increase the numbers of teachers who get this honor to receive this training and support so that we can do just as you say, address retention needs. And we know that the workforce conditions are probably the #1 reason why we lose staff, but we have to look at compensation and we have to look at training, and we have to show teachers their value, show all educators their value. And we are in a society that gives lip service to educators and says we value you, but then we give them low salaries. And while districts make the decisions about how much a teacher gets, there is advocacy at the state level to increase state compensation. There are bills that would increase compensation dramatically for classroom teachers. And so we have a lot of work to do in this area, and we welcome your help. And I'm humbled to receive the award and hope to see you there. And I will only accept it on behalf of the educators who are doing the frontline work. My job is to lift them up and to use the microphone that this job gives me to amplify their needs and then to try to go get it. They told me once when I was in the legislature that I set a record for the amount of money that I asked for in the legislation that I authored. But I also learned as a freshman legislator here a phrase that I still believe to this day. You show your value by what you put in your budget. And so if we value educators, then let's give them the right kind of compensation and training. And if children are truly our future, like everyone says, then let's show them that by what we put in the budgets to support them and support their educators. The final bill I'll mention that I'll be testifying on any minute when they give me the hook and pull me out of here is the vice chair is saying the hook is coming sooner than you know, is a bill that would allow retired teachers to return to the classroom temporarily without a penalty to their pension. And as you all know, there are so many retired teachers who want to help but can't because of the limits on how much they can earn without experiencing a penalty. All across this country, there are teachers who retired because of fatigue, some earlier than they had intended. There are states that are making a movement to bring those teachers back, but they have to create ways to work around any penalty to their pension. And so I'm asking through our bill SB 765, to start that conversation in California about how, at least in the short term, we invite retired teachers back, but maybe there's something that we're doing long term for those teachers who retired early because of the working conditions during the pandemic. And we find ways to address retention in the same ways that we are also trying to address recruitment. Did I complete the assignment? Thank you, Professor.
Superintendent Thurmond, you have been a fierce advocate since the start of your administration, and we appreciate your willingness to be responsive, and I'll let the commissioners know. Feel free to email Superintendent Thurmond and his staff with any additional questions because we need you to advocate out in the field. So if it's okay with everyone, I'll make a motion that we move to our break and take a picture with Superintendent Thurmond so he can get back to the students' business.
Thank you. That was the nicest way I've ever been told. You got to go. No. Appreciate
All right.
you, Vice Chair.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Welcome back, commissioners. Thank you so much. That was super duper cool. We have a nice picture for our annual report with SSPI Thurmond. We are now going to be moving into item number 2, Operations and Planning Committee report. I would like to take the time to highlight the conversation we had during O&P committee meeting this morning. Item number 1, we discussed the self-nomination process and the election for 2023-24. We did that already. Thank you, Commissioner Topalian. Then our next item that we talked about was our annual budget and reasonable accommodations for student commissioners. So I would like to open up this conversation for the commission so we could talk about how we can reasonably support student commissioners for August. I'm going to open up the floor for other commissioners.
I'll jump in and kind of summarize the conversation we had related to the accommodations. A good conversation identifying our role as fellow commissioners in support of the student commissioners and distinguishing that role from the Department of Education, who provides accommodations to any individuals who require accommodations to participate in any of the public meetings or access the building. And so our conversation focused on distinguishing between the support that we can provide a student commissioner and any new commissioner who might need support and additional mentoring in joining the commission, and something we may want to consider formalizing as new commissioners come on to provide some orientation around bylaws, Robert's Rules of Order, how we make a motion, et cetera, and the process to communicate with the department should they need accommodations to access the meeting.
Director Calamise, I said you want to say something? Okay, anybody else? Okay, so I'm thinking we need to make sure when we are looking at our finalists, right, and looking at what they may need individually in preparation to participate in the meeting. So I just wanted us to have that conversation and know that we are going to be collaborating with CDE when that time comes for individual accommodations for student commissioners. Commissioner Estes, your hand?
Yes, I just add one of the things that we discussed is that there have been youth commissioners on the commission for a while. So whatever our past practices have been, which I'm not familiar with, but I think just making sure that we're following through on all of that as we're choosing the commissioners would be great.
All right. So we are going to be making sure when we have our student finalists, we're going to be looking at accommodations for each individual. Yes? All right. So let's move on. Tostin?
moving on to the next item, or?
The next bullet.
The next bullet, okay.
The next bullet within this item.
Yeah. So we also had a conversation about, and we talked about the different processes and timelines that are required for the department and how they line up with the ACSE meetings. In your packet, there are documents that highlight the calendar for the State Board of Education and ACSE. ACSE meetings happen or interspersed between the state board meetings with the intended flow. A conversation here, our liaison is able to receive our advisement information on anything that may be flowing to the state board and inform the state board on those particular items. We've identified a gap in our meetings and conflict with some of the federal timelines to submit various reports. There's data that's collected in the early fall. Our meeting happens shortly after the data collection, and our next meeting doesn't happen until after the time that until February, and the state board typically needs to act in January in order to be responsive to the federal timelines. We considered asking the feds to modify their timelines, and still haven't heard back, I assume. Yeah. So recognizing there's limited flexibility on the reporting dates and the Herculean effort that it takes to collect the data on October 1, get it synthesized, clean and reportable by February is already a short timeline. And so want to recognize that, but then also ensure that as part of our mandated responsibilities to advise on certain reports and recommendations that we have an opportunity to provide input. And so one of the considerations, and we've talked about this, I believe, a number of times and a number of years, is almost an additional meeting focused on timelines and reports like this, maybe in December, recognizing the challenge that we would have with the Thanksgiving holiday, the winter holiday typically at the end of December, and all of the business that has to happen in December, as well as the coordination of CDE staff, although Superintendent Thurmond made a commitment about 5 minutes ago, so maybe that's less of an issue. And so I wanted to, again, continue to gather information about the possibility of hosting a potentially virtual meeting in December so that we can provide advisement on those various reports. I'll pause. Any other points of emphasis that I didn't touch on from anyone else, part of O&P?
The only thing I would add is, and I don't, maybe you said this, that the discussion was that meeting may be remote so that we wouldn't be here in person, and it would make it easier for people to participate in a December convening.
So definitely a virtual meeting so that we would be able to maybe have a more focused agenda and be responsive to the department.
Okay, so looking at the item 2D, resolving the 3-month ACSE meeting gap document. So what Vice Chair Tossin was saying, that we have to coordinate our meeting times with the State Board of Education so they can get our advice, and so CDE can do their thing and then submit the APR data by the deadline. So our only option is a December meeting, and we were indeed talking about a virtual meeting. So I would like for the commission to consider a motion on the floor for ACSE leadership to submit a letter requesting CDE research the master calendar schedule for the December month and bring it back to us so we could figure out the best week for us to have an additional meeting to look at APR data and submission dates and all that.
I would just add, we also had a discussion that would be not necessarily a 2-day convening, but a briefer convening with a shorter agenda. So
Yes, this is just a conversation for us to consider a motion on the floor to look at the calendar. Okay?
I motion to consider the calendar changes. Calendar. Is that right?
Say it, David.
If I might amend, I move that we begin researching the calendar and other details to hold a virtual December meeting that would allow us to review pertinent information on a much shorter agenda.
Then I second him.
Any discussion?
Motion.
One other, well, not discussion, but I think also considering there are a number of activities that the department needs in a year. Maybe that meeting could be the meeting where we address or respond to a number of needs from the department to have ACSE weigh in. There are components outside of the special ed division that sometimes need to be heard here. Similarly with CTC, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing occasionally has items that need to come before commission. So just suggesting that there may be a way for us to be strategic and preserve agenda time on subsequent meetings for other conversations if we can focus all of our kind of business items on one agenda in December.
Any further discussion? Ms. Chapman, can you please facilitate a roll call vote?
My pleasure. Vice Chair Tostin?
Yes.
Commissioner Estes?
Yes.
Commissioner Graff?
Yes.
Chair Hayes White?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Notch?
Yes.
Commissioner Snipes?
Yes.
Commissioner Sorter?
Yes.
Commissioner Topalian?
Yes.
Commissioner Mashad?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes for CDE to bring us the master calendar and look at the month of December for a virtual meeting. Okay? All right. So now let's talk about the next point within this item. We had a conversation about our duties under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and making sure that we are grounded in what we are responsible for doing. And so, Commissioners, please look at item number 2C. Do you guys see that? Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 United States, Section 141221A through D. So we focused on D. Where is D? Duties. D for duties. And I'm going to read this because it says the advisory panel shall. Okay? The advisory panel shall, 1, advise the state educational agency, that is the California Department of Education, of unmet needs within the state in the education of children with disabilities. 2, comment publicly on any rules or regulations proposed by the state regarding the education of children with disabilities. 3, advise the state educational agency in developing evaluations and reporting on data to the secretary, just like we talked about, under Section 1418 of this title. 4, advise the state educational agency in developing corrective action plans to address findings identified in federal monitoring reports under this subchapter. And 5, advise the state educational agency in developing and implementing policies relating to the coordination of services for children with disabilities. So this is our charge, Commission. And I wanted to link our charge with the motion on February 15th that we had regarding the regarding the IEP implementation data, right? So that's why we did that motion, because we need to be able to publicly comment on any proposed rules or regulations proposed by the state educational agency. All right, are we clear about that? Commissioners, any other comments on that item that we discussed while we were meeting?
Part of our conversation obviously recognized our responsibilities as an advisory body, and the need for us to maybe identify priorities and strategies, because anything that the adjective "any" is pretty broad. And just speaking for myself, not real inspired to go through all the different rules that are changing in a given year. And so how can we collectively identify priorities and policy areas that are critical for us to devote our time, so that we can plan for those conversations, as well as provide the department direction in the agenda building. Otherwise, I mean, you can look at the proposed changes just for this year. It's a pretty lengthy list and gets pretty granular. And so identifying the areas that we want to weigh in would be a very productive step for us as a commission.
Commissioners, any other comments on this point? Commissioner Notch.
I think just as a point of clarification that would be helpful for me, at least, but potentially for other commissioners, is we picked apart the language a little bit in that D2 references comment publicly on any rules or regulations proposed by the state, whereas all of the other items say state education agency or educational agency. So we weren't sure if that was intentionally more broad and we should be considering other bodies. Anytime there's a shall, I want to make sure I know exactly what we should be considering. And so if that is indeed the case, then I think we should be, when we're thinking about December meetings or kind of being strategic about priority areas and ensuring that we have an opportunity to hear something that we're broadening out beyond the educational agency and to other bodies as well.
Just talking about process, one of the conversations that we had was, is there a possibility for a work group meeting like we did with relation to the youth members that are coming on, the amendments to the bylaws, et cetera, but is there an opportunity for the commission with representatives of CDE to talk through the responsibilities of the commission and the roles of the commission, and come to some strategic plan for the commission rolling into next year, and an understanding of the things that are priorities and what we will want to be discussing in order to discharge our duties as a commission for the state.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Estes. CDE would be happy to facilitate conversations on sort of planning and priorities and strategic planning as well, and also helping the conversation along around sort of the role and function of ACSE and really how to maximize I think the strength, quite frankly, and the expertise on this board. So certainly, I think good topics for the future for us to really sort of dig into.
Okay, and the last and final point within this item, we talked about the CSACE plan and the SIM for CSACE plan, and what I am hearing about the elimination of the CSACE plan. So I wanted to ask Director Calamise more about what that is, and the continuum regarding target, intensive. So Yeah, just to open up that.
I believe you're referencing significant disproportionality. And so, I think in terms of the coordinated, intervention plans that our LEAs are required to develop, along with the state's sort of the set aside of their IDA funds of 15%, is something that we know that our LEAs across the state create multiple plans for multiple reasons. And so the sort of decision-making process to sort of embed that sort of CSACE plan and sort of the larger planning efforts is something that we are certainly looking into, recognizing that sort of having sort of separate plans that lie outside of larger systems. We know that districts that are identified as significantly disproportionate, these are symptomatic of sort of larger district-wide issues, right, that go beyond special education. So as much as we can embed and capture that information in other sort of planning efforts is certainly our goal. And certainly our focus as well, as we know that this is an area of concern not only across the country but across the state. And we take very seriously the process in supporting our LEAs across the state and addressing areas of significant disproportionality across several areas as well.
All right. So I would like the commission to consider a motion on the floor so we can have a presentation regarding disproportionality and the new SIM for CSACE plan and how that works and how that plan is implemented to help resolve disproportionality in California. So is there a motion on the floor for us to have the commission submit a letter to CDE so they can deliver a presentation to us regarding the SIM for CSACE plan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Turn your mic on. Any discussion? Ms. Chapman, can you please facilitate a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Vice Chair Tostin?
Yes.
Commissioner Estes?
Yes.
Commissioner Graff?
Yes.
Chair Hayes White?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Notch?
Yes.
Commissioner Snipes?
Yes.
Commissioner Sorter?
Yes.
Commissioner Topalian?
Yes.
Commissioner Mashad?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion has passed. Are there any public commenters in the building at this time? Seeing none. Ms. Chapman, can you please put up the public comment slide for telephone public commenters, please?
The public comment slide is up. The conference dial-in number is 717-908-1937. The participant access code is 467-9071#. Public comment is now being heard for this current topic only. Prior to making public comment, callers should make sure the volume on their computer is muted to avoid feedback sounds. Copies of meeting materials are available by emailing acse@cde.ca.gov. Let's pause to allow our callers to dial in. We have no callers.
All right, hearing none. We were delayed on our schedule, now we are ahead. So why don't we go ahead and enjoy a break right now, right? Yeah, we have a break. So, well, let's just have a break till 12:15 because folks are coming in at 12:15. All right, we're gonna take a break right now at 11:40 and return back here at 12:15. Thank you. Just breathe. Welcome back, commissioners. I hope you had a good break. I did. We are now ready to move right into item number 3, the new Individualized Education Program Implementation Data Collection. To meet the monitoring requirements outlined in 34 Code of Federal Regulations, the California Department of Education Special Education Division is required to collect aggregate data on individualized education program implementation during the spring of 2023. Shiloh Duncan Bursarill, Associate Director of Special Education, will share with us the why, the how, and the next steps regarding the state mandate. Associate Director, I turn over the mic to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Good afternoon, all commissioners. It's nice to see you again. So today I'm going to talk through a presentation we provided to the field that discusses our new data collection that helps us to understand a little bit more about what's happening within the implementation of IEPs throughout the state. We provided this presentation in, I think it was February, to all LEAs. It was a very well attended presentation, mostly for the folks who will be collecting the data and sending the data to us. And we had lots of questions. And so I'm going to kind of walk through what we presented to them and kind of go through some of the questions that we also heard. And so, what we're going to be talking about a little bit is the description and the requirements that we have, the procedure we're going to use to collect the data. We are collecting this data through a website that is outside of some of our normal data collections because we're not collecting it at the student level. We will also talk about the process workflow, how that works, and the data validation requirements, and finally the timeline. So let's talk a little bit about why we're collecting this data. So we're using it to fulfill our monitoring requirements under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in the Code of Federal Regulations 300, 600, and 300.323. And those two sections are about monitoring the requirements in IDEA. That's 300, 600, and 300, 323 is about how individualized education programs are created, developed, and implemented. And so one of the things that we've identified through a number of means is that we don't always collect how those things are being implemented. One of the things that we did want to start off with this presentation and what we talked about with the LEAs in February was the importance that this is not about an individual gotcha for LEAs. This is not about one student. And I think that has been some of the concern that we've heard prior to our presentation was this is going to be used to go after individual teachers or identify individual students. That is not the purpose of this collection, and we made that very clear. The purpose of this collection is about implementing and identifying systemic needs within implementation. So it's not about did one student receive or not receive their service. It's about are there a prolific number of students that exist within an LEA who are not receiving their services overall. So I just want, hopefully that will be a little bit more clear as we walk through that. But we really wanted to understand in general how are LEAs implementing IEPs. And this is really to flag LEAs. It's not to assign noncompliance immediately. It's to say this LEA is having issues that we need to follow up on, that we need to learn more about, that we need to support. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. So at this point, we've never collected this data. So we don't have an idea of how IEPs are being implemented throughout the state. And that, I think, is a key problem. If we don't know the baseline, if we don't know the information that exists in the state, it's really hard for us to understand how to support LEAs and how to give them what they need. And so people ask us all the time, how are IEPs implemented in the state? I actually couldn't tell you from a data perspective. I hear stories, I hear individual cases from time to time. We have complaint data, but that doesn't give us a statewide picture. And so we felt that it was important for us to understand how LEAs, not individual students, not individual classrooms, not individual teachers, but how LEAs are implementing IEPs. So we're going to collect this data in a set of percentages. I'm going to go over that here in a little bit. And we're also going to assess the reliability and validity of the data, which is also required for us under law. Anytime we collect data, we are required by law in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act to collect and understand that that data is valid and reliable. So we do that in different ways for our other data, and we have a system for doing it here. So let's talk a little bit about the procedure that we're using. So what we're going to do is we are going to provide each LEA in the state a list of students. And it is a randomly selected list from their current enrollment. So we're going to pull their enrollment data, and then we're going to provide them a list of students. And depending on the size of the LEA, we're going to make the sample size sort of commensurate with the size of the LEA. So if you are between 1 to 100 students, the maximum number of students that you would pick for, that you would be selected for this collection would be 20. So it's a sample. And then the number goes up from there. And so if you have more than 5,000 students with disabilities, then the maximum students you would be reviewing data for would be 500. And we don't have very many LEAs in that category, but they do exist. And so we wouldn't want them to collect 10%. For example, there are around 90,000 students with disabilities in Los Angeles Unified. If we asked them to select 10%, we would be asking them to select 9,000. And really, when you look at statistical analysis, you don't need to collect such a large sample in order to get the information that you need. So we felt like 500 was an acceptable number. The next thing that we'll ask LEAs to do is take those lists of students and look and see each student, what is the percentage of IEPs that they were provided. Was it between 95 and 100? Was it between 90 and 94? Was it between 90? And then you count the numbers. So for example, if I give you 100 students as part of your sample, you would say how many fall, what is the percentage that falls into the first category, the second category, and the third category. I'm going to give you an example here in a little bit to show what we're talking about, but it's really an aggregate level of count. So the LEA collects the data, they look at it, they create a percentage for each student, and then they determine which students fall into which categories. So here's an example. So this LEA is a large LEA. They have more than 5,000 students. Their sample is 500 IEPs. So for the time period between March 1st and April 28th, that's the time period we use. So it's not a whole year of IEP implementation because that's a lot of minutes. We're looking at the number of students the students would receive during that time period. So for example, this student here was supposed to receive 2,160 minutes. That's the minutes prescribed in their IEP. They received 2,000 of the required minutes, and so they are 93% of implementation. And that student is added to the bucket for category B. So as you can see, it's broken down here. 410 students receive between 95 and 100% of their services. 70 students receive between 90 and 94.9% of their services, and 20 students receive less than 20% or 90% of their IEP services. So this is really helping us to understand how students fall overall. We do not collect the individual student level data. We only collect these aggregate numbers. But I'll talk a little bit about validation because I know that's a question that typically comes up. So that's the general procedure and methodology. Some of the questions we received a lot was, what happens if a student doesn't receive their IEP minutes for lots of really good reasons? And this is where it really comes down to, this is not about an individual student. So we received questions saying, well, should we keep students home from field trips, because then they wouldn't receive their services if their speech services are on the day of the field trip? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. Do not keep kids from their activities. Do not keep them away from lunch. Do not keep them away from PE because you're trying to make up minutes. Understand that this is about all the students in your LEA, and this is about all the students in the LEA, not about a single student. And so that was really important for us to communicate to the LEAs when we were presenting this information. This isn't about tracking every single minute of every student. It's about taking a set of students and seeing overall how are they doing. And then combining that data within all the LEAs and saying, in general, this is how the state is doing, and this is the state, these are the LEAs that we see need to do more work in this space. So in order to collect the data, we are collecting the data through an individual website that's outside of, say, our traditional data collection methodologies. So normally we would collect data through like CalPads is the most common. We also have a couple other elements that we collect data. But those are all student level data collections. And we also have a personnel data report where we collect data. That's about teachers. So we needed to collect a way to get this data, because in order to reinforce the idea that this isn't about one child, this is about children generally in an LEA, we didn't want to collect it at the student level. That was really important to us, because we don't want to send the message that you sacrifice a student's learning, a student's experience, their time with their peers to capture every minute. That was kind of important for us. And I know that's still kind of a struggle that LEAs are dealing with, but we thought this might be a good way for us to collect this data that continues to uphold the integrity of what we're doing. So every LEA is going to have a log on to this system. And when they log on, they will get this view here. And so what will happen is you'll see there's, it's a very sensitive computer. This LEA here is represented, and then they would have a list of students that they could download. And that list would be what they would use to actually do the analysis. And you see here they have the success rates that they identify. Those are the same categories that we described in the previous slide. So as you can see, there's a link there that says download the student records that provides the names of all the students in the sample. They can download that into an Excel spreadsheet. And you can see here they have the information on how they can input the data. So this is really I know there's more analysis and work that happens behind the scenes, but in terms of reporting and what we're asking them to provide to us, this is 3 numbers that we're asking them to provide to us. And they can save their data, they can come back to it over a period of time. If they start to do 100 and they need to come back, they can save their data, update it, all the way up until they submit it. And the submitting the IEP data sends it to the next level. We're going to talk a little bit about that level. So SELPA is also a product and a partner in this process. And so because the special education local plan areas are the ones responsible for data collection within the state, just like within CalPads, they have a review and approval process within this data collection. And so for every LEA that submits the data that's within their SELPA, they will get an alert that Palmdale Elementary has submitted its data. You need to go in and review it and approve it. And the expectation is that SELPA would review it, and then they could approve the submission, or they could reject the submission and they could state why. And so if it's rejected, then it's sent back to the LEA and it says your SELPA has rejected your submission and we're going to need you to resubmit. If it's approved, it comes to us as a final approval. This is very similar to the way the data is sent to us in CalPads or other formats, like the personnel data report, where LEAs submit something, the SELPA reviews it and approves it, and then it gets final certification to us. And then, so this is kind of what the data collection website looks like for SELPA. They can see all of their approved, their unapproved, their unsubmitted LEAs within the SELPA. We always see SELPA as a partner within our data collection processes. And so we wanted to make sure that they had an easy way to see which of their LEAs fall into which buckets, where are they at, how many students they have. So it was a way for us to look at that. And you can see if they have an if they have a SELPA that has maybe 20 or 30 districts, then they could see which ones are approved, which ones are submitted and waiting approval, and which ones have not submitted yet. So because the LEAs are doing a lot of the calculations behind the scenes before they submit to us, we do have a validation process. And so we're required to have LEAs certify and SELPAs to certify. So what does that certification mean? That certification is a lot like when we get CalPADS data. That CalPADS data is, we don't check every single student record. We have this LEAs provide certification that this data is accurate. And then the SELPAs are supposed to review and provide also a certification of accuracy. In addition to that, because we know that this is especially a new data collection, and because the aggregation is happening at the LEA level, we also have an additional validity check that we're going to be doing on 10% of LEAs. So we are going to randomly select 10% of the LEAs, so that's right around 225 LEAs. And we're going to ask them to submit their student list to us so we can check and make sure that they did the calculations correctly. And so ask them how they kind of got to some of these numbers. It's not about checking individual students, it's about making sure that they've done the calculations correctly, that they've added all the correct information together. And that's going to happen randomly on about 200 LEAs annually. One thing that I did want to clarify, I don't know if I said this in the beginning, this is an annual data collection. So this is not just this year that we're doing this. We will be doing this every year going forward. So what does the timeline look like? So we started training the field and talking about this in February. March through April is our data collection window. So what does that mean? It means we're going to be looking at the time period between March 1st and April 28th. And then at the end of April, we will identify the LEA, for each LEA, the students who were enrolled in that LEA for that time period. So this is a really critically important piece of information because a lot of LEAs ask, can we get the students' names in advance? And the answer is really no. And it's not because we don't trust them or we don't think they're going to do anything weird. It's because we want to make sure that every student we provide to them is a student that's enrolled from March 1st to April 28th. And a lot of districts, especially bigger ones, are going to have a lot of movement. And so it's important because you get inaccurate information if you're including students who are only there part of the month into the total counts. So that's why it's important. So we wait till the end of April to pull the sample and then upload that into our website. And then in May, they're going to have access to the student lists, and they can begin to perform the calculations. They have all of May and all of June to submit that data. And obviously, if LEAs are struggling to get that completed timely, we will work with them. We understand that this is the first year LEAs are doing this. This is a struggle. It's oftentimes very difficult. We also understand that the timing is a little bit funky. We're hoping to be able to address that in future years, and meaning we can move the timeline up a little bit so it's a little bit earlier for LEAs, but unfortunately it's just how it landed this year. But they do have 60 full days to pull the data for those students and then do the percentage calculations for them and input the data. So something to kind of keep in mind, we have been notifying LEAs of this coming data collection for more than a year. So we did let them know that this would be happening in the 22-23 school year. We did a pilot last year with a number of LEAs to try and see how it would work. We have also been working with the IEP vendors to let them know about the need for LEAs to pull this information in different ways. So this is not a new thing. In fact, I think we actually started talking about it in 2019, but we put off the implementation of this data collection in part because the pandemic made it really difficult for us to do that kind of work, especially the stress the LEAs were going under. Lots of IEPs were not being implemented for various reasons. And so it was important for us to wait until things were back to a more normal state in which we could implement this new data collection. So that is now. And so the goal that we kind of want to put forward is that we have an IEP data collection. We're trying to establish to ensure that we are adhering to our requirements under law. As you know, California is a highly litigious state, and so we do have a number of pieces of litigation that ask us these questions. We also have a number of complaints that touch on this space where we have to work with LEAs, and we don't have the data to go back and say, is this case that we're having in a complaint systemic, or is it more of a one-time case? And by having a statewide data, it helps us to ensure that we're meeting those requirements. And then before we get to additional questions, people often asked us, like, what's next? What does that additional help and support look like for LEAs? And the question is, we don't quite know yet. We need to get the data first, because I think the answer to that question is much different if no districts in the state are implementing their IEPs versus just a few districts, right? So what does that kind of look like? We need to understand the range. We need to understand the student experiences for LEAs, for children, and the LEA's struggles in this space. We can only do that once we have the data. So we're getting a baseline, we're getting the starting point for this data, and that's what this is about. And then once we do that, we do believe it's going to be part of our full monitoring system. It's going to be included as a calculation piece, meaning the way we identify districts for monitoring, this will be a factor that helps identify whether we're going to begin to walk them through a monitoring process that helps them develop a plan. We do not see this as a compliance element because we see this as identifying systemic issues that impact a student's ability to be in school, to access their education, to access the classroom, to be fully included. If they don't have access to the services that were provided in their IEP, it really hinders them from being successful. So we see the way that we look at all performance indicators as connected. We see this as a connected performance indicator that helps us identify systemic issues. So that's the presentation we provided to LEAs. We did have lots of questions about how to calculate those things, and we've been developing some frequently asked questions. And we're posting those. We do have a website, and I'm happy to provide it to you all that houses this information as well. And there's also an email IEP implementation at cde.ca.gov, which anytime LEAs have questions or concerns regarding the space, they can ask us. So that's the information. I think that's all I had today, but I see many of you might have questions, so I wanted to make sure I had spent some time answering questions, because a lot of times this is less about the individual data collection and more about understanding the why and what we're looking at and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Associate Director Duncan. So do we have questions lined up?
Yes, there are a few commissioners who'd like to make comments.
Okay, let me ask a couple of questions and then I'll open the floor. I think I have some of my questions answered. So this is indeed going to be an annual monitoring piece.
So this is just like we collect data for students' suspension and expulsion and attendance and least restrictive environment. We are collecting this data annually, and it will be part of our selection for monitoring. So it will be a factor for selection of monitoring, and it'll be a data factor that's used as LEAs are developing integrated plans to support children with disabilities in their districts.
And I think I heard you're not sure yet, but is in your annual monitoring, do you think that it's always going to be a sample of 500?
It's a sample up to 500, right? So it's 10% of LEAs, and I can go back to that chart because it's a little bit confusing. I tried to, it's always a balance to do the techie part, the techie data part from the programmatic piece. So if you are a district who is between 200 students with disabilities and 4,999 students with disabilities, then it's 10%. and that's a lot of our LEAs. There's only 17 LEAs that are greater than 5,000 students with disabilities, and those districts would collect 10% up to 500.
So I guess my question is this procedure and methodology going to be the same every year?
We intend for it to be the same every year. We don't like to make changes to our system, although I do know that's sometimes a perception. We do make lots of changes. But my hope is after this initial data collection that we can have a more standardized data collection. And so my intent is to keep this methodology. We do want to have a randomized sample that is significant enough to collect information about each LEA.
And my next question is regarding the timeline. Do you think it's going to be the same timeline so LEAs can be prepared and have this piece in their calendar so they can be prepared to meet this requirement?
Yeah, so we do anticipate it's always going to be in the spring. And so one of the things that we've heard, obviously, is our due date is on June 30th. A lot of LEAs go out of classes and they finish school, they're out for the summer, and so that's not the most ideal time. So ideally, if we could move things up a month, I think that would help LEAs a lot, but it will always be in the spring.
I don't know if this is a silly question, and this is my last one before I open up the floor. Could this potentially pour into disproportionality?
No, so disproportionality and the way that we do disproportionality, meaning the individual one-year calculation for disproportionality is a requirement under the U.S. Department of Education's annual performance report, and then we also use it to meet the 34th CFR 300, 646, and 647, which if you, in those that set that regulation, it's very specific what we have to look at and how we have to look at. And IEP implementation is not currently included in 646.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, what say you?
Commissioner Notch.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I'm excited to see the FAQs because I think I made a list of questions I had, and I think I'm going to skip some of them and see if they're in the FAQs because I don't think that they're unique questions. So I can always bring it back if it's not there. But putting my parent hat on, you mentioned something in the beginning about not wanting students to be excluded from activities and things like that, and that's certainly something that we've had many discussions about at my son's IEP meetings about, we don't want his services to be provided during social and, community opportunities that are happening that help build him just, being part of the culture of the school. And we've had varying responses to that, right? Some of the responses we receive are, well, that's not, we can only not owe him services if he's absent, but if he's here, we have to do, so how do you recommend that push and pull gets balanced as far as, there's obviously limitations on you don't have unlimited time and more providers than what you need, and so scheduling is an issue, but how are you having that conversation right now in the field as you're working with LEAs to advise them on this in particular?
So I think one of the biggest things that we started out with is this is not about an individual student. And so those conversations happen at the individual student level. This is about how generally you're doing as an LEA. I think the next level of that conversation that we're having is, hey, it seems like very few of your students are receiving 90% of their services. Instead of talking about individual kids, can we talk about why? Is it the services? Is it that you are struggling in this space that we can provide support, that we can provide advocacy, that we can refer you to a technical assistance provider? So I think part of it is that. Part of it's a lot of conversations that we've had in the past. For example, we know that IEP implementation comes at the sacrifice sometimes of students' accessibility and inclusive practices, especially in the middle school space because of that dreaded master schedule. And so having that conversation, like what are you sacrificing within the space to ensure that? And I think the voice that Heather and I have had around how we frame this, right? We do not want districts sacrificing that. And that's why for me, and I've told LEAs this, as long as I sit in this position over monitoring, this will not be a compliance factor. Because once it becomes a compliance factor, then what you describe is exactly what will happen. LEAs will see this as we have to ensure that we check off every minute of every service at the sacrifice of whatever. So as long as we try to keep it out of the compliance space and more in the performance space, I'm hoping that districts will see this as like, hey, we're not doing well in IEP implementation, but guess what? We're also not doing well in our assessments. We're also not doing well in LRE. So how are these things connected in a way? And I think one of the things that we've heard through our monitoring is that districts appreciate that we're now making more of those connections. And I think we will as we get better in that space.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer so much. Quick follow-up. When you poll your, did you say 10% of the LEAs for that kind of second level of monitoring? I know you're not getting down to individual students, but systemically it could be a practice, right? When as you were sharing that, if people get too bogged down in compliance in every single minute, it could become a systemic practice that they're polling students. So might that be something that you're looking at when you get down to that level to help inform those systemic issues to lift up more inclusive practices, or what do you see kind of the oversight role for that level of monitoring being?
So when we do the validation is really about, did the district kind of do the math correctly? Did they count the correct number of minutes correctly? It's not so much about whether or not they were in compliance with 300.323. And just so you know, the law doesn't say necessarily that districts have to implement every minute. This law, the quotation from the law, I've looked at it because it's really important. It says it has to fully implement, right? And so you have to fully implement the IEP, and thinking about the spirit of the IEP is we want to make sure students have access and support to the things that they need. And yes, the IEP should be fully implemented. It is a legal document, and we want that to happen. But that should never come at the sacrifice of the children's experience and their supports. And that's the communication that we're having with that space. So.
Just touched upon something that is very important, which I really think we should be. So could you explain to us more about what that fully implemented means, at least in my world as a school psychologist? You try, we document the fact that the student is absent, we try to make those connections, we document all those things, but we also know the kid is obviously not showing up, or there's a situation that's going on, or maybe whatever the situation is. So at that point, do we owe minutes, is my question to you. Are we fully implementing the IEP, and do we owe the minutes?
So I don't know if I'm the right person from a legal perspective to answer that specific question. I think that we want to implement the IEP fully, meaning, if a student needs to get minutes, they should try and get minutes. You should document it. I think when that's sort of challenged within a legal space, I think it has always been relatively difficult for us to gauge. We try to go down to the exact minute, but what I don't want our folks to be doing, and I don't think in a monitoring space, is to have our staff spending time chasing every minute and instead asking the questions, how are students doing overall in the LEA? How are they being supported? It's one thing to say students' IEPs are not being implemented, but then to add on to that our belief that IEP implementation combined with the impact it has on students' access to education, the impact it has on their access to the least restrictive environment, those performance factors really are about, and we've talked, I think, before about this. I think Heather has presented our theory of action, which is if we provide students fully their supports within the correct placements with high quality education, then we believe that their education will increase, their academic assessments will increase, their behaviors will go down, and then we will have children who are more college and career ready. So a big portion of that is the IEP implementation.
Thank you. But I also, I mean, there's some things that we can't control within the education system. And that's, if the parent's not bringing the student to school because of other reasons. And I know this is getting more complicated, but I just want to, because I know we get dinged. So we get this all the time. So we don't want to get dinged for those minutes as well, because we want to do the best that we can to provide the opportunities for the student. That's number one. And the space and whatever we need to do. But if it's not working out and we're not, are we going to get dinged for that is my question. How does that look when you guys are looking at those numbers?
So I want to get away from this idea that we're dinging districts. And I know that's hard within the state. Even districts, when we're looking at noncompliance associated with other factors like disproportionality, we see those as factors in identifying systemic issues. So it's not about dinging individual students. And that's why we provided a range. For districts to put students into, so that we could see, yes, you may have one student where that happened. The question is it every student? Is it happening to every student? And that's what we're looking at. So it's not about dinging an individual student or an individual teacher. It's about looking overall, is every student missing service? Is the propensity of all students missing services? And if they are, let's ask the questions about why. You're welcome. I think there's some questions over here.
Commissioner Mashad.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Very helpful. So you had mentioned that this will be an annual review. That timeline will likely be spring, possibly moved up a month. Is there a reality where this would be more than a 2-month window of data collection, where we might be looking at 6 months or the full year? Or are you anticipating just 2 months, but possibly moved up a bit?
Yeah, I think 2 months seems like the right amount. I mean, we're gonna collect the data now and see if we get enough data. I do not see it going 6 months or a full year. That is, I think, overly burdensome for LEAs to do that kind of. I mean, that would be talking potentially millions of minutes in an LEA that we're not really. I don't think that that's helpful for us to collect. So we have to kind of think about, like, what is the maximum amount of benefit that we can get from the right number of students and time. So I think we found it. So I'll let you know, but it will never, I do not see 6 months being appropriate.
I would definitely agree with that being overly burdensome for LEAs. And then one other question, the FAQ is super helpful. I would imagine that as I'm sitting down to be analyzing this data and sending in reports, I will have a million questions and LEAs will as well. Do you have office hours or more sort of in-person touch points set up for once the date, that May through June window?
Yeah, I do believe that we're going to set up some office hours. I have to circle back with my team. I know they're working right now to set up the sampling. So this is happening out of our data shop, the same folks who bring you disproportionality and annual performance report. So they are now running, getting ready to run the data for the sampling. But yes, I do think we're going to have some office hours. I don't exactly have the dates and times yet. We do hear from LEAs that CDE provides too many touch points, too many office hours and too many trainings. And so we're trying to kind of balance that. But we do have an email, and the folks who oversee that email are very responsive. So I will tell you, if you email them, they will be responsive to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Estes.
Hi, nice to see you. Just a couple questions. One is, do you have any sort of template that you're providing for the data collection that you're asking for, Ray?
No, we don't have a template that's provided. I know that some organizations have developed potentially a template. I know LEAs have collected a template. There is also some service tracking software providers that have created this within their system. We don't prescribe them. So what's really important is that we do not prescribe the manner in which this data is housed in the data system. So if districts want to use paper and pen to house this data, they can do that. If they have a system, they can do that. And we don't prescribe how they track it within the system when we provide them the names. We just ask for the aggregate information.
Okay, thanks. And then the other is just having handled a fair amount of uniform complaints, Ray, minutes, requirements, and the analysis that goes in there. I'm just wondering, the largest issue really often is something you touched on, which is the root cause. What was the reason why? What's the root cause for why, as Janine is mentioning, a student did not receive those services? And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You're going to do the data collection, which really doesn't get into root cause, and then maybe over time that will become part of the conversation, because it does seem to me, that's something to talk about. And then the technical assistance associated with, what sort of like, what are the real bases for this? So
I know that Heather pulled me aside and said, hey, I think the commission would love to have a presentation on our new monitoring system, the SIM. And so I think when I come back, it's going to be helpful to see kind of where this sits. But I'll just kind of tell you very briefly, because I know there's other questions, is one of the biggest changes in our monitoring system is now a multi-step process. And the first step is looking at your data and digging into that. And the second step is a root cause analysis. Every district has to look at all of their data, not just the data that caused them to be in, but all of their data, including this data. And they have to develop a root cause analysis. And they develop multiple root cause analyses for this. And so, yes, districts are going to dig into this data and how it's impacting students overall and how it's impacting their outcomes, and that will be part of that conversation. I think the reasons why vary greatly based on the LEA, based on the location. And so, yes, I'm very interested to see this as another layer of data that districts are using in root cause.
I'm pretty familiar with the root cause analysis that's happening now, and I'll be interested to see how this root cause analysis informs what we are already currently doing. One of the things I brought up in the last commission meeting was, does the root cause analysis that we are utilizing go into factors that are sort of beyond something that, education might be looking at, like socioeconomic factors, housing factors, transportation factors, like factors that are really within the purview of other agencies in the state of California who are simultaneously serving students.
So I have questions or comments from Commissioner Snipes, Topalian, Notch, and Sorter, and Lopez.
I think you touched on it really well. I was thinking about SIM compliance the whole time, but I see this as becoming another useful data point for LEAs who are in SIM, and really kind of driving like those high leverage strategies and being part of root cause analysis. And the one thing that I'm really interested in is seeing how the data that you collect correlates with LEAs that are in SIM. Like those B and C level percentages, is that aligned with LEAs that are in SIM? And then that will help them really take a look at their system, which is the whole purpose of this. So I think that keeping it from being directly compliance doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't going to be a piece of compliance, and I see this being a valuable piece of that. So,
yeah, I think I'm also really interested to see if our districts who are in our most intensive level of monitoring, who are in the bottom 10% of districts in the state, also have, the highest rates in this. Like, for those of you who've been around here a while, I used to be the data administrator for special education for 10 years. I only came here when I was talking about data. And so, so I'm really interested to see what that correlation kind of looks like as well.
Sorry, it's okay. I'll say it. So again, coming back to the whole, I know when we recently had to do this for my own district, and one of the things was that we had to explain, and there's some of that explanation where we had to give why some kids were not at that, receiving their minutes and different percentages in that sense. And I think that I'm hopefully, it gives us an opportunity. I should come back and say, I know I was very reactive to say, we're going to get dinged, but it's not about the dinging. It's about the process and what are some of the steps and what we need to do and how we get to assist, because there's no way of covering all those schools, especially in my district, and knowing where everybody is in every minute of the day. And just being able to see maybe it's a systemic issue, and is that going on with that same provider, or is it more of the school, or are they pulling them out and just looking at all those factors? And we're hoping those exclusionary factors you guys will take into consideration too. But of course, first line of defense is provide services at all times.
I think for us, it's also just what is the state of the state? Like, I couldn't tell you right now, like, what is the state for the individual education program implementation? I couldn't tell you.
So I like to just put it out there too, one more step ahead. Like moving forward, I hope you guys have something in place too. Maybe this isn't the place, but just like when we do have another, hopefully not, but something that is major catastrophic, what's going to happen? Like steps in place, so then we could avoid some of the, like the back service and pulling students out more for 300, 400 minutes more from class. So.
Commissioner Notch, Lopez, Sorter.
Sorry, I thought of one follow-up question. For the 10% audit of LEAs, you're checking their calculations. So am I understanding that you're going to go down to the individual student level just to make sure they did the math correctly to get to the category A, B, C percentage? If they didn't, I guess maybe now that I'm talking, I think my actual question is any of this information public facing? Like, would it be similar to Dashboard where you could go and you could look at implementation? And if so, if you, in your audit, identify inaccuracies, would that just be learning lessons for next year's collection, or would the information be changed if it's, however, I guess either inward facing or outward facing, if it's going to end up with monitoring in the future?
So I think the data right now is not public facing. I don't know if it would be. It could be. It's something we could definitely have a discussion with in the future in terms of our our local performance reports. That might be a place where that could be located. We just don't have any baseline data now for us to even. I couldn't even say what that might look like, but. However, when we're doing the validation, like we say, hey, this student's data was calculated incorrectly. Their number should be this. We would go in and change that number for this year, right? So that's part of the valid and reliable data. And we would treat that the same way we would treat any validity issue within a district's data, meaning we would determine if it's a one-time, like they just didn't get it, right? Or somebody, accidentally pushed the wrong button, or if they systemically, and that's a whole nother data validity issue that we work with. For districts who are not submitting valid and reliable data across our data processes, we have them go through a data validation process.
Lopez, Commissioner Lopez. Sorry.
Thank you so much for this. Nice to see you. I had a question regarding, this is a new monitoring, as you mentioned, and did we look at other states that might be doing something similar and seeing what worked for them or didn't work for them so that we are not completely reinventing the wheel?
So one of the places that we struggled with this data collection when we were implementing it is when we asked states, most states don't collect this type of data. So we would be one of the first states to collect the data like this.
Okay. And then I had one other question. When selecting, you mentioned all grade levels. Does that include after graduation into the adult transition program as well?
So any student with an IEP ages 3 through 22 would be eligible for this data or 3 through 21 would be eligible for this data collection.
Thank you.
First, I just wanted to say thank you because when the original presentation happened, it was during the ACSE meeting, so we didn't get to see it. So I do want to acknowledge hearing the commission asking for this and having you come today. So thank you very much for that. Two just real kind of date questions to follow up because it's almost May. We're like 2 weeks away, I think, from the cutoff. Will there be a notification? How would LEAs get notified that, hey, your names are there, you can start now? Like, do we have a date for that? And will the FAQs come out before that? Because I think there's probably a lot of questions around chronic absenteeism and figuring out the times.
So I do believe we have a box account that has the FAQs in it now. I'll make sure everybody has access to that. I mean, it's a public-facing account. It's just not on our website yet. So I can definitely give everyone access to that. That's not a concern. And anybody who attended the webinar and any LEA that signed up with us and any LEA that we have contact information for, meaning their SELPA director, their special education director, have received a link to that. And so they can have access to those FAQs at any time. And so those are available now, and we're consistently updating them. Will there be a notification to LEAs when their data is ready, I do believe we are preparing a notification so they know when they can go in, because they have to receive like their username and login information to go in and get the data. So yes, they will get a notification. They also get notifications like when it's been approved, when it's been submitted to CDE, so they do have those kinds of access.
Always appreciate your presentations, and I want to wish you good luck as you continue to try and rebrand monitoring from less of a compliance stance. I know it's been a few decades, so continue the good work in terms of changing hearts and minds around that.
I mean, when I come back and present on our new monitoring system, it is called the Compliance and Improvement Monitoring System. So we can't get away from compliance. That will always be a factor. But I think I'm excited to show everybody who's willing to listen this system and the way that we've sort of looked at improvement as being the center of all the work that we do.
And so my follow-up question is, recognizing with large LEAs, there may be lots of different schools within their system, community schools, alternative schools, charter schools. Will the random list of names extend to all of the school sites in that district?
So it's not going to be stratified by like school site or grade or anything like that. It's just random. Like any student could be selected regardless of their school site, regardless of their age, regardless of their disability and grade. So any student could be selected as part of that random selection because we haven't looked at stratification. I do think districts, larger districts, for the most part, will have a little bit of an easier time with this because a lot of them already have like data systems in place that track them because they have to, right? Because their systems are so big. Versus smaller LEAs are going to struggle a little bit more with this, I think.
Any additional comments from commissioners? Yeah.
Sorry, I just had one follow-up. If, for purposes of evaluating accuracy, you said you're collecting the IEPs in order to cross-check that, but the IEP doesn't reference the implementation rates. So are you also pulling the underlying data that the LEA collected in order to check that calculation? I was just trying to figure that out.
So we don't collect IEPs at the department. And so we would not be collecting IEPs directly. We would look at the underlying data that they use to make that calculation.
Okay,
we wouldn't go directly back to the IEP unless there was something so concerning to us that we needed to go back to the reference document, but we don't collect IEPs here at the department.
That's why I got confused. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, one more. Regarding small LEAs, I see that you have annually or cyclically. Is this possibly going to be brought into the like cycle ABC triennial process for small LEAs?
It is. I think it is. I think it makes more sense to do it that way. That's what we've kind of heard. This year it will be an annual, and we're kind of see how that works. And a lot of the feedback we've already received from small LEAs is like, oh my God, this is really hard. And we need more help. And the nice thing about our small LEA cycle is that it is a little bit more hands-on. We have staff who can help small districts walk through that and be available to them to meet their individualized needs. So I think we're kind of reviewing that as being part of the cyclical monitoring as opposed to the annual.
Thank you.
Everyone's questions and almost right on time.
All right. So how about we do this? Can we please have the public comment slide come up so the public can begin to dial in and form a line and queue? And then I would like to ask if there are any public commenters in the building to please line up. Ms. Chapman, can you please set the timer for 2 minutes? All right. You have the mic.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My name is Rebecca Acord. I am liaison from CTA to this body. And there's Personally, in my district, I've heard about this year, and our SELPA developed a tool for us to collect this data, which, we obviously know that we are responsible for that anyway. However, there have been some problems that I have heard through CTA, and what I need to bring attention to is that even though these mandates from the state we have to follow, that does have bargaining implementations in our districts, and CTA does expect that our collective bargaining units, that those agreements are followed, and any way when these come down, that any demands to bargain are respected. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Veronica Coates, Tehama County SELPA, as well as representing the SELPA Association today. Want to thank the Associate Director and her presentation, as well as reiterate that the SELPA Association is a partner in this work, and much to what this colleague just said, many of the SELPAs have created some of those systems for their LEAs to track this data. But also wanted to bring about the concern of the small LEAs. I heard a few concerns, and I really appreciate the Associate Director saying she's heard some concerns as well. But when you look at that slide, it doesn't seem equitable to require our smallest LEAs to do 100% of their data, while our largest LEAs less than 1% of their data. And when we talk about teacher retention and administrator retention, and we're asking practitioners to do that in the last month of school, we have concerns about that. We have provided the department with some alternative activities, and I very much agree with Associate Director on the cyclic process. I think that could really become a part of that process, especially as it gets into that nuance of ed benefit, and could potentially even look at LRE analysis, as some of the commissioners were tying that together. That cycle really dives deep into the nuances of those areas of performance, and I think that's what's most important, is to look at those trends and see how we can get better. But we also need to have the practitioner voice that this is an exceptionally burdensome thing, especially for small LEAs. I have 16 LEAs, and 3 of them have special ed directors. The rest will be doing this as superintendent principals who are driving the bus, cooking the meals, sometimes in classrooms. So I wouldn't be me if I didn't say we also need to hear practitioner voice. Thank you.
Thank you, commenter.
Good afternoon. So I'm Lana Tellez. I'm the liaison from CARS Plus, which is California Association of Resource and Other Special Educators. What I've been seeing is some unnecessary stress being placed on special educators. And this is just according to what we are hearing from our members, is that LEAs are placing a lot of pressure to input minutes into an IEP platform, such as Cyrus or SACE. And I know that Cyrus is doing a great job to support special educators. It's kind of a shameless plug for Cyrus, but they have done a really good job of helping support us with, bulk input and all that. So LEAs, from what I'm understanding, LEAs can collect from a variety of data collection efforts. Educators already have this information. They do data collection on the daily. The problem is inputting it into the platforms that the LEAs want to make their jobs easier, which we totally understand. So I do see this as an efficient tool, but it will take time, and I hope that in this first collection of data that CDE is understanding that there's going to be, this first round is going to be pretty rough because educators are trying to play catch up. I mean, I know a lot of my members are saying that they're seeing, they were notified in March and were given, 4 to 6 weeks to do this from the entire school year. So it's been challenging for them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, commenter. All right. So now we have the public comment slide up still. Thank you. So let's give the public an opportunity to dial in. Do we see any public commenters?
Presently, no.
I'm hearing that there's some trouble dialing in. Do I need to give an access code? I'm getting messages that they're waiting in queue.
Caller ending in 2160. Please state your name and affiliation.
Karen Taylor, California Teachers Association. I monitor all special education issues around the state. First of all, we're really happy about this data being collected because we also want to see where there are issues with services. We want our students to be served, and we want the best possible public education for our students. Where we're seeing issues are with problematic templates and problematic practices. So, for example, Irvine Unified School District has created a template that's very cumbersome for our members. It forces them to do a daily service minutes miscalculation. It's causing a lot of extra work on teachers. We have districts like Tustin who are pushing on teachers, first of all, to do the data collection through May, which is not even the right date, and then also telling teachers that if something is missed, it's going to come back down on them and on those individual students. We feel like you guys have, the CDE has done a really great job, being clear about what's expected and what's not. However, we still have special education directors who don't understand what this actually means and that this does not come down to individual students. We still get a lot of calls about field trips and making up service minutes for spring break, like out of Anaheim Elementary. So we just want to make it clear that even though the CDE has done a great job with the FAQ and being clear in the trainings, that I think additional guidance and information is needed because it's unfortunately not showing up in the field in that way. And we do want to support these efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, caller. Are there any other callers at this time?
Caller ending with 3835.
They just disconnected. They left. Okay.
That concludes the callers for this item.
Thank you so much, Special Ed Division, for this presentation. We really appreciate you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, public callers. Thank you, commenters in the building. We are now going to move forward with our item number 4, Legislative and Policy Committee updates and reports. We will now hear from the Legislative and Policy Committee co-chairs, Notch and Tostin, as they share an update regarding the progress in our Policy and Legislative Policy Committee. I pass the mic to Vice Chair Tostin.
Good afternoon, commissioners and the public. Since our last meeting, the Policy and Leg has touched base several times and had an epiphany. We actually should change our posture as a body. Currently, our practices, we have our foundational documents, our equity rubric, our pillars, as well as our mission and vision statement. And each year we try and track on bills related to special education. Well, there's thousands of bills. Some speak to special education directly, some indirectly. And so Vice Co-Chair Notch and I identified that it is probably unrealistic for us as a body with the limitations around Brown Act requirements and just the timing of our meetings to be tracking on bills. So I want to acknowledge all of our partners who were responsive to requests for the bills that you're tracking, but even looking at separate bill sheets from different organizations, how do we reconcile all the various different perspectives related to a bill. And while we want to be advisory, we also want to recognize the need to be efficient with our time. And so Co-Chair Notch and I are proposing that a shift in our orientation where we would be a little bit more proactive in terms of looking at all of our foundational documents, identifying what our priorities are. For example, this is not priority setting or policy setting. If we said inclusive practices, literacy, mental health, and student voice are the priorities of our commission as we go into next year, we would be able to communicate that at the beginning of our year to our agencies that we liaison with, so that they could be responsive and let us know items in the field that we should be tracking on. Additionally, allows us an opportunity to leverage our voice through our communication channels. Our annual report that is typically a review of conversations we've had in the previous year. If we set our agenda or our priorities, we could prospectively say in our annual report, here are the things that we've heard from our partners, constituents, parents, and students that are priorities that we intend to focus on over the course of this year. And then being able to leverage other communication channels like the special ed, as well as our roles as commissioners when we're out and about in the field in terms of understanding what is current and what is important to the field. Some of the other areas, as I age in real time in a public meeting, is developing a priorities roadmap, consulting with our liaisons regularly. If we were to advocate for legislative changes around our priorities, and not necessarily in real time, recognizing sometimes we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what we can accomplish in a series of years, specifically the 2-year legislative cycle. The last 2 points, communicate strategically, again, using our annual report and other communication channels. And then monitor and evaluate our progress. If we are going to be impactful, in addition to setting our priorities, should there be goals that we can measure our impact and effectiveness and potentially influence around, so that we are holding ourselves accountable in the same way we're asking LEAs to sample data and provide data. As we report back to our reporting bodies, being able to identify, here are the areas that ACSE prioritize and focus, and here's the impact that we have had through our conversations. So that is the vision or suggestion of how we might approach our policy and ledge work that would require us to, again, take a look at our foundational documents, approach them differently. I want to pause and make sure I'm not leaving anything out, so checking with Co-Chair Notch. Keep talking, David. You've been going so long. And so we wanted to propose that to the commission as a thought today. And if there is support between now and our June meeting, Co-Chair Notch and I would identify the documents that we would need to look at and potentially facilitate a conversation at our June meeting so we can close the year with a vision of how we want to start our year at the next meeting. So I will pause for questions, thoughts, feedback, hopes, and dreams. Co-Chair Notch, you wowed them.
That update. I did such a great job on that update. Thank you, Co-Chair. I just wanted to say also thank you to everybody who attended the Legend Policy Committee meeting. It's one thing that Co-Chair, Vice Chair, I'm going to keep saying it because it sounds great. Co-Chair, Vice Chair Tostin and I have talked about is we don't want to do this in a vacuum. We want to make sure that we're really lifting up the entire voice, including our liaisons that we regularly interface with. So appreciate very much the discussion this morning and looking forward to getting feedback from all of you, doing some homework between now and June, and coming back with some great suggestions on how to amplify our voices and our impact moving forward.
So we will solicit reactions and comments from commissioners. Commissioner Groff?
No, I just want to compliment the co-chairs. about moving in this direction. I think it's needed, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
One other point of emphasis before we close that I think was essential. I don't remember who raised the topic, but sometimes in our documents there's language that's familiar to us. So in the logic model, it talks about artifacts, inputs, outputs. As we are celebrating our inclusion of student commissioners and grappling with how we, as a commission, make sure that everyone has the support they need to understand the information, being very thoughtful about how our forward-facing documents are accessible by our parent community, student community, and those who are not directly tied to the system, and have their Rolodex of acronyms and how we use certain phrases. And so we'll be as mindful as we can as we are creating those documents, resources, artifacts, and stuff. We'll be very thoughtful around that, but also want to solicit feedback from our statewide partners if you have suggestions, models, and tools and resources that you're already using that you have found evidence that they are friendly to our broader community and certainly more accessible. Thank you. Commissioner Estes.
I just had one thing to add. It was me who mentioned the language that we use and making that language accessible to everyone, but also that the Mental Health Committee will work with you to make sure that we have one strategic plan with priorities for the commission that we can then be working towards throughout the year in the ways that you mentioned. And then along those lines, I would love to interface with the state board regarding their priorities and, ensuring that we're in alignment with the state board as well. So.
Any further comments, commissioners?
Well, Commissioner Estes, and by extension, any appointing body in terms of their priorities and understanding.
Yes.
Any further comments, commissioners? Okay. So, Ms. Chapman, please put up the public comment slide for this item. And then I would open the floor for any public commenters in the building. Allow folks to dial in if they would like to make a comment.
Hello, I just wanted to ask for clarification. So I'm guessing that from what you're saying that you're not going to spend meeting time going over all of the bills that fall within your purview. But does that mean they'll be posted somewhere else? Because we really look to you guys for your insight, because it is what you look at affects and impacts special educators and special education students. So I was just curious, will there be some place where you will provide that information so we can share it out? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. You can't answer our questions. Any other comments in the building? Okay. Are there any commenters on the phone?
No, there is not.
All right. Hearing no further comments on this item, we are now going to move forward with our general public comment item, item number 5. At this time, the public is invited to make comments on any matter, including items not on the agenda. Commissioners are precluded from discussing matters not on the agenda. However, questions may be asked by commissioners for clarification purposes. The commission would like to acknowledge receipt of all public comments submitted via email. Issues raised by the public may be referred to a future meeting agenda item. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes. Ms. Chapman, are there any public comments in the queue? I'll give people some more time to dial in.
Caller ending with 7407. Please state your name and affiliation. Your time starts now.
This is Judy McKinley calling in. I am a dinosaur in the name of Larry Comer, who was a wonderful advisory commission chair for years in the past. I believe that the commission is beginning to get back on track to do the duties that it is mandated to do. Things are looking much better, and hopefully they will continue to improve. My specific interest is specific learning disabilities and reading. I'm not seeing a whole lot of that being addressed in the commission. I would like to see it agendized more often with information being presented. Thank you.
Caller ending in 0426. Please state your name and affiliation. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, Chair Hayes White and Commissioners. I am Ken Fallsgraf, board member from Acton-Aguadose Unified. I would like to thank the Commission for its continued attention to SED out-of-state placements. There are times when the current funding model formula falls short, creating budgetary challenges for small school districts, with out-of-state SED placements being a prime example. In these cases, costs can put financial and legal strategies ahead of student need, placing SPED staff and administrators in an odd position, not to mention the biases that are fed in the process. I encourage the Commission's continued attention to this matter to include consideration of an SED funding model that does not debilitate the budgets of LEAs and oversight that considers student need while being appropriate dispersal of public funds to non-public agencies, especially those outside the state of California. Thank you.
This will conclude the callers.
Thank you, callers, for calling in and sharing your voice. We are way ahead of schedule, so we are going to have our lunch break right now, and we will return. So we will return back for 3 o'clock. I heard that Senator Josh Newman might come like around 3:15. So can we just say come back in 3:15? Okay, so we will take a break and return back here at 3:15. Thank you. Welcome back, commissioners. We're going to move right on into item number 7, 2023 Annual Legislature Day Capitol Visit with the chair of the Senate's Committee on Education. We have our special appearance from my very own Senator Josh Newman, chair of the Senate Committee on Education. We are super excited and delighted that you have been appointed on the committee, and we are happy to have you today. Please, I turn over the mic to you.
And so I'm grateful to the chair, and I'm proud that she is one of my constituents. I have another constituent here as well, April Lopez, right? So Senate District 29 is well represented. But as the chair of the Senate Committee on Education, it's a pleasure to be here. Welcome for your Advocacy Day. And more importantly, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the constituency that you serve, which is not only those people, but it is their families and it is their communities, and the work that you're doing is so important and so consistent with the ideals of California as an inclusive and respectful and compassionate place. And so I could not be more admiring or grateful of the work that this commission does. And with that, it's a welcome to Sacramento, and I'm, happy. I think we were going to do some back and forth of some kind.
Well, why don't we have everyone introduce themselves so you know the name to the face? So let's start with Commissioner Michaud.
Got it. Hello, my name is Russ Michaud. I'm the Managing Director of Special Ed at Alpha Public Schools in San Jose, and this is my first day on the commission.
How exciting. And welcome, and congratulations, and thank you for your service.
Hello, welcome. I'm Victoria Graff, Professor Emeritus from Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And while you don't represent my district, I'm close. I live in Orange County, so I'm relatively close to you.
I appreciate that. And I have been kicked off the tennis courts at Loyola Marymount at least once, so nice to see you.
Tell me more. We can talk offline.
A time ago, I did not have ID, and they were right, probably. But what a nice place. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Heather Snipes. I work for the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project with El Dorado County Office of Education, and I am physically located where I live all the way up in Humboldt County. So I'm not close to you by any means, but
far away from me as you can be, but it's a beautiful part of the state. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Elizabeth Estes. I'm actually from LA, but I live up here in the Bay Area. I'm a longtime children's lawyer in California, dependency, delinquency, and education. And now I am the founder and director of a nonprofit called Breaking Barriers. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon, Senator. I'm Sarah Notch. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education and Instruction with the San Mateo County Office of Education. My role on the commission is as a parent of a child with a disability. So that's my hat first and foremost here and in life. And I'm also the co-chair of our Legislative and Policy Committee. So very excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
April Lopez, longtime friend, constituent. And, my daughter Isabella Dominguez and my daughter Ava and Benjamin. Wonderful to see you here today. And Ava, my daughter, joined me, and she saw your name on the agenda and said, "Wow, he's our friend. We know him. He's a friendly." And I said, "Absolutely." So thank you for being here today. Nice to see you.
Hey, it's so nice to see you. And April has done so much good work for so long, not only in this commission, but in Orange County as well. So it's great to see you here.
Hi. I'm Melanie Johnson. I'm the director at an agency called Diagnostic Center Central. I'm out of Fresno. There are 3 centers, and one's in Fremont, and the other one is in Los Angeles. And I am actually here as a proxy to Dr. Nancy Liebach-Alman, who is the director of State Special Schools. And we are a part of CDE. Mm-hmm. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me to the CDE. I've never actually been in this room before. It's very, very impressive.
Hi there, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Heather Calamise. I'm the director of the Special Education Division at the California Department of Education. Thank you for all that you do to support the commission and also students with disabilities across California.
Thank
you. Senator Newman, my name is Dr. Havanya Hayes White, and I'm out of Chino Hills, and he's done amazing work in my area. I began this career as a special ed moderate to severe teacher in special day classes, and I currently teach and prepare adults who are pursuing their teaching credentials. So I am super duper elated to have you here with us, and all your dedication and service to across California and to students and families. We thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Tossin. I serve as the vice chair for the commission as well as the co-chair to the Leg and Policy Committee. I'm an educator supporting districts and county offices throughout the state in my day job. I wanted to thank you so much for being here and just alert you of our intent to be better partners or increase our partnership with you and the rest of the legislature to work on our shared priorities for our students. So look forward to talking with you more.
Likewise.
Welcome, Senator. Thank you for being here. My name is Janine Topalian, and I am an administrator for Los Angeles Unified in Psychological Services, school psychologist specializing in neuropsych. I live in the Los Angeles County, however, all the way in Woodland Hills, so I'm far away from you, but thank you for still being here.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Good afternoon. I'm from a neighboring district of yours. I'm Barbara Sorter, Executive Director of Special Education for Riverside County Office of Education. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Wilkins. I'm an education administrator for the Department of Developmental Services, and I oversee education programs in the Developmental Center and the state hospitals.
And is it fair to assume that Russell and Matt, you're both new because you have
Yes, I'm the I'm the matching bookend first day.
So, welcome. So glad to have you as part of this effort as well.
So that is us. Can you please tell us a little bit about what you do in your role as the chair of the Education Committee? What does that look like?
So I am very proud to serve as the chair of the Senate Committee on Education. The Senate Committee on Education actually has jurisdiction over all of education, K through 16 in California, and the policies that pertain to it. I recently appointed in the beginning of this legislative year, and it's sort of a natural outgrowth of some of the work that I've done over the last 2 years as the chair of something called the Senate Special Committee on Pandemic Emergency Response. And in that capacity, I had what I would describe as a ringside seat on kind of all things pandemic, which included, as you know, incredible stresses as it related to education, the provision of services, especially to the most vulnerable, and all of the families that are affected by that. So one of my goals as chair is to make sure that we do not forget that there are a whole host of latent impacts still remaining from the pandemic that need to be addressed over the next several years. More generally, we who make policy over education have an obligation to make sure that all California students are provided both the best education but also the best services, especially those students who need additional support. And my goal as a policymaker is to make sure that we do that in an equitable fashion. And lastly, as we look into the next fiscal year, we're going to be facing some fiscal challenges that California has not seen in many years. And as a result, we're going to have to make some tough choices around prioritizations. And again, one of my goals, and my colleagues share the same sensibilities, is to make sure that if we do have to make difficult choices, it should not come at the expense of those who are most vulnerable, and that includes the people that you serve. So glad to be your partner in that. I'll look forward to working, as closely as we can to make sure that we serve each other's needs as we do that work.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Newman. I know you have to go back to the Capitol for your committee. So can we please have a picture for our annual report, and we will let you go ahead and go. All right. So let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back and wrap up the meeting. We'll take a 5-minute break. All right, commissioners, thank you for taking that small break so we can have a picture with Senator Newman. So I am going to open the floor for folks to make their comments on this particular item, and then open the floor for the public to make their comments too. Commissioners, how was the day? Excellent. Oh, turn on your mic.
It was wonderful. We met, I feel like, gather my thoughts, but we, in a short time, we did a lot. We went through many different things, but again, just to use the word about how we're strategizing and planning and developing and implementing looks different. and hopefully moving forward with some of that force and accomplishing would be great. The development phase is great, but I just feel like we need to get to that point already of accomplishing things. So thank you.
I really appreciated our legislators who came down today to, it's great to go to the Capitol, but it's also wonderful for them to be able to come here and see what we're doing and interact with us in this, the dialogue that we have back and forth. And so it gives us a good vibe, and that we can also educate them all more on what we're doing. And I think that that's a great relationship to have. And so I really love that part of today. So thank you for arranging that. Sure.
Just echoing the enthusiasm, I had a COVID beginning to my appointment on the commission, and it was wonderful. And this is better. I feel like we're able to do a lot more, to have deeper conversations, make connections, and I'm just really excited about the work that we're going to be able to do together. And just a welcome to our two new commissioners. You're incredible additions to the team, and it was so lovely to meet and welcome you today. So I hope you've had a phenomenal first day, not COVID first day.
So I would echo the same thoughts, and just my appreciation for all the planning and coordination that has gone in today, and obviously our special visitors. It's great to see Russell on the commission, having known him for several years, and to watch his continued advocacy and leadership in our state, and also to meet Matthew and understand of his rich background, and just seeing a full commission, because it has been a while because of turnover and different circumstances, and COVID being online. And so it definitely feels as though we're able to embark on the journey and conversations that I know have driven many of you to commit your time to be on the commission away from your other responsibilities. And so a sense of enthusiasm as we go forward in developing not only our internal structures and systems, but some of us were talking today, like the whole one system concept should apply to the advisory boards, state boards, all of the auxiliary components of the big apparatus. And so very excited about how we are growing as a team.
I echo that. Commissioners, any other comments? Please, Russell, come on.
I appreciate the really warm welcome. Thank you. I think it's been a great first day, and I'm excited for the work ahead. So thank you all for the warm welcome.
Commissioner Wilkins?
I would just echo those sentiments. It's been a great first day, and I really appreciate the warm welcome, and I look forward to the work ahead, and I'm humbled to be here, so thank you.
All right. I am just super duper honored to be fellowshipping with each and every one of you on this dais, each and every one of you in the audience, and CDE staff liaisons. You guys are the bomb. Thank you so much. So let me, hearing no further comments here. Okay. Ms. Chapman, can you please pull up the public comment slide so we can get that going? And if any folks in the audience would like to make a comment on this item. All right. Seeing none from the audience, I'll give a couple more pauses for the public comment. Uh-oh. All right, I'm hearing that there is no callers for the public. Okay, thank you. So, commissioners, I would like to review the agenda for tomorrow so we can come into the room with a clear objective.
For item number 8, that was called Debriefing of the 2023 Annual Legislative Capitol Day Visit. We're going to strike that because we just had that debriefing right now, okay? So we're going to strike item number 8 and come in for 1010 into item number 9. For 1010, we're going to begin item number 9, okay? So CDE has agreed to start at 1010, yes? Okay. And then I will talk to item number 11, folks. Everybody else is internal, okay? So we will begin tomorrow with item number 9. All right. Yes, go ahead.
I want to clarify, the official ACSE meeting will begin at the item as Chair White shared, but there's also the Mental Health Committee meeting from 8:30 to 9, and the Goal Committee from 9 to 9:30. For members of the public, please be advised those committee meetings will not be televised.
You're welcome to come and join us in the building. All right. Any other comments on that? Hearing none, seeing no further business, I now adjourn our Day 1, April 19th, 2023 meeting at 3:34 p.m. We will continue our Day 2 meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you tomorrow.